this year particularly, I think we're going to see a big spotlight on brand marketing, largely because of AI. I'm always thinking about the brand. So if I see a meme, if I'm listening to a completely separate podcast, reading a book, etc., I'm always putting things that just like speak to me.
Okay. How do I go with brand marketing in general? What's the first step?
It's going to sound simple, but I think you have to super.
I'm Michael Saifuddin. I'm the founder at KLIMB, and I'm super excited to start this podcast series, KLIMB Club, to discuss my favorite topic, which is brand. And also today, I'm super excited to have as a guest Stephanie Bowker to talk about experiences and different things, and specifically about brand-led growth.
Cool. Thanks. Well, nice to meet you. My name is Stephanie Bowker. I'm the CMO at Defacto and a brand-obsessed person.
Well, we worked together in the past because we worked together at Spendesk, and you hired me at Spendesk.
That's true.
When you were head of marketing there. I wasn't really looking for a job. Super great feeling, I think, from the start. And we worked together for 2 years something. Then I left or you left, I don't recall.
I think I left first.
You left first.
With our space.
You left first, yeah.
So both caught the entrepreneur bug.
Yes, definitely. And so yeah, this is how we met.
Yes, it's one of my proudest accomplishments is stealing people out of their other jobs.
Yeah.
To work for.
And then, of course, when then you had other projects and so on, and the most recent one is Defacto.
Yep.
And so you're now in charge of marketing at Defacto, and you reached out because you knew about KLIMB, if I'm right.
That's correct. I think so. No, actually, you first.
I reached out.
Wait, I don't actually know. I think I reached out for something else, and then it turned into, which is the best example of a good salesman, into, I think, a pitch call.
Yeah, potentially. Yeah. That's it. Just curiosity.
Sneaky.
Yeah, maybe. Actually, it's not really like a tactic, but it's like
it's a tactic.
It wasn't part of the plan, but it's like I realized that when the best first touch points with customers is just the ones where I just have a call, like just out of curiosity, just trying to understand what they do, just trying to meet someone, and being completely generous about the approach, like asking questions about how did they end up doing what they do, how did they end up building their company and so on, and trying to learn about people. And then once we get into this discussion, in the end, people, of course, most of the time ask me back the question, and then I can talk about what I do. And sometimes it makes sense to have a connection and build a project together. What has been potentially one of the best branding projects you've worked on?
Good question. I would say probably the definition of good for me is probably one that I enjoyed working on and had really great impact. And I would say the first big brand project I had was at Gusto. So context, we were previously named ZenPayroll. We recently rebranded to a new name. Okay. And we moved from being a single product for payroll to now an all-in-one HR and benefits. Okay. So when we did that, obviously we lost a lot of direct traffic, a lot of organic search for branded. Okay. And just in general, we were really struggling at that time to acquire customers beyond our payroll offering. Okay. So Jolly, at the time she was the head of marketing, put together a proposal for our team to actually have a competition. Okay. To kind of be in charge of this project, right? Because I think being in charge of the brand project sometimes is one of the most coveted ones. And so it was really fun. For a week, we broke into 3 different teams. And by the end, we were supposed to pitch the idea for the campaign. Okay. And I was lucky that my team's project got chosen. And so we pitched for HR people that do everything. It was a real 360 global campaign, and out of home, digital, videos. We did a really engaging social with a survey that turned into a fun quiz as to like what kind of HR person are you. And why I really love that campaign, I think one, just the way that it was, we executed it was really like a fun team spirit project.
Okay.
But then in terms of impact, is huge, both in terms of short-term metrics. Like we definitely saw during that quarter a huge spike in return on our organic branded search, but also really long-term, we really saw it as kind of the pivotal moment that we started to be repositioned, not as our only payroll product, but really own the name Gusto and be known for the full HR platform. So that was really
nice.
One of my favorite projects.
It was back in the US, right?
Yes, back in the US.
Okay. I know that today we talk about a lot about different movements we have in brands. And one of the big movements we are seeing is brand-led growth. And I know you're big into this. And so maybe can you tell us a bit about what is brand-led growth, like some kind of definition maybe for the audience?
Yeah, sure. So I think brand-led growth is a concept that's always existed. I think it's more recently we love, giving very specific names to things. Like obviously PLG, product-led growth, is a term that we've been using, since I think 2014. OpenView Blake coined it. Really, that a product is the driver for acquisition, retention, engagement, and mostly from a self-serve. And so we know companies like Miro, Slack, Notion that are PLG, right? And they get a lot of credit for the product completely selling themselves. What I don't think has been given enough credit is also that these three companies have invested in brand as well. Because, when I mention them, what are some words that you think of, right? Like modern, cool, maybe the people that use them are cool, in comparison to like their, competitors like Evernote, Teams, who quite frankly has had such good product starts, but didn't really invest in creating that connection. And so really the definition I think is best really coined by Kira Klass, my former colleague at Gusto, and she has a really great Substack called On Brand. And I think she worded it best that brand-led growth is the proactive strategy to create a positioning messaging that resonates with them from your users from an emotional standpoint to drive acquisition, retention, and growth.
Okay, I get it.
Quite wordy.
Yeah. When I'm looking at all the companies we are working on at KLIMB, we have founders that just raise money, like 4 million, 5 million, and maybe they don't even have a product market fit yet. Yeah. But I realize now that some of these companies, they still want to invest just from day one in their brand. And I just wonder, that's just explaining a major shift, I think, about how people are looking at brand nowadays, not just like before where you just like, okay, maybe I'm just going to have my product on the market and that's it. And we're going to see how the market reacts. See?
I think it makes sense though, because I think it's just a much more competitive market, right? Before you only have 1, 2, 3 options for a certain solution. Now you have dozens, right? So no longer, it's not like you just, because you're one of the first to kind of innovate in the space that you get it. I think there's just also higher expectation in terms of user experience, right? And I think how product, brand, service feels matters, as much as, even if not more than the functionality. So I think it makes sense and I think it's smart.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
That's why I exist also at the same time. Okay. And so last time I was browsing LinkedIn and I saw you shared your Notion avatar and so on. Yeah. And under it, you said the year of BLG. Yeah. And so I'm wondering, why do you call it the year of BLG? BLG for brand and growth, obviously.
Well, I mean, I would say every year is the year of BLG.
Every year should be.
But I think this year particularly, I think we're going to see a big spotlight on brand marketing, largely because of AI. I mean, look, AI we see is changing, evolving so quickly the way we all work. And I think particularly marketing is seeing a huge overhaul, right, in the cost efficiency of creativity being easier, right? Yeah. I think the ability to personalize at scale. And also just now we're going to see a proliferation more even of lookalike content and the distribution channels like email are completely shutting down. So I think I think we're going to see more of a focus on companies breaking through by really having authentic connections and investing in that long-term loyalty to break through, right? Because a lot of the other kind of short-term tactics, I think, are easier to compete on.
Yeah. But I'm wondering, how do you really differentiate? I mean, I think people are just coming sometimes to me and like asking questions about, okay, how do I go with brand marketing in general? What's the first step?
So I think it's a super good question, and it's one that, like, when I've done a bit of advising work on the side too for early founders. I think it's gonna sound simple, but I think you have to super know your customers, and not just like how they use your product, but I think get in touch with their motivations, their emotions, like what makes them tick, what makes them angry, to really specifically speak to them. And I think brands that work are the ones that could really only be the one to say or produce that campaign. And I'll say, like for example, I think Mailchimp, one of my favorite brand campaigns of all time is Did You Mean Mailchimp? Right? Like, this started from a insight, right? That no one could remember their name, or calling it, misspelling it, et cetera, right? Yeah. No one else could do that campaign, right? Like, it's something that someone else could do. I think you have to just like really dig deep into finding something specific, and I think leaning into that. But I think also, to follow up on that too, it's not just design, because I think like design, like, I don't want to say design is easily copied, right?
Yes,
but,
it is.
But
Definitely.
I think now, right, with like especially the AI tooling we have, like, it's crazy how you can quickly replicate higher quality work. So it has to be like, how does everything connect, right? How does the way you speak, what are the campaigns, what is the content, and the visuals kind of all connect, so that, again, it feels just like only you. Yeah. And not like someone else. Yeah. But it's hard. It's really hard. It's really hard. Yeah.
And to follow up on that, like, maybe can you share maybe some of the biggest challenges you've seen in branding?
Yeah. Well, I mean, a personal challenge, or just kind of in the market in general?
Maybe some personal ones. Okay. To make it really,
tangible. Yeah. Well, I think, like, I would say one branding exercise that I think was challenging, and is challenging right now, is at Defacto. So right now I work at Defacto. It's a modern API-first financing solution for SMBs. Yeah. So why the branding project has been a bit challenging is twofold. One, I think it's in an industry that is, fast financing hasn't had, like, I would say, an extremely great reputation. It's not something users usually like to be associated with. Like, when I first joined, it was super hard to do customer testimonials because no one really wanted to be the face of this kind of tool. So I think that was one challenge. I think the second challenge has been, so we offer 3 different products: self-service lending for SMBs, the embedded API for B2B partners, and now new, our lending as a service platform for banks and traditional lenders.
I know about it.
Yes, we worked on it. And so the second challenge is, these are 3 different personas, 3 different use cases, 3 different products. And kind of, as I mentioned earlier, like, what needs to be important about brand is you need to really speak to that user, right? Yeah. So first, to tackle kind of the first challenge, the first phase was really working on, I would say, repositioning, rebranding, making fast financing sexy. Yeah. Was kind of the first mission that we did, and which I think has worked really well. Now it's actually kind of crazy. We have some folks that, like, ask to be on our website because they just want to be associated with the growth lever Defacto. So that was the first one, which was, I think, the easier one. The second one,
it's actually, I mean, a challenge. When I look at it, because financing doesn't seem to be like a very fancy topic, so to brand, at least. So it's a good thing. It's if people are really into it.
Yeah. Well, you're on the website now. Yeah. So I'd say the second one has been the more challenging one, and the one that we're working on right now. As you know, we're refreshing and refine tuning our brand positioning and the brand look, so that we now instill more trust that we've added this new layer of having banks and factors. We now are a licensed financial institution by the ACPR, so that also comes with just expectations on the reputation we have. So I would say this has been challenging because we've had to let go of some of what we kind of loved and evolve to kind of what we need to be. Which I think is one of the hard parts of a brand, is it's living and breathing, and you need to be okay with kind of shedding some of your old stuff while not also losing the core of who you are. So yes, it's a project we're mid right now.
Okay. How do you define also the difference between brand marketing and growth marketing?
Well, I hate that question, but I'll answer it. Because I think the word growth, I think for me is a bit problematic. As you know, as we had our growth team was the main demand gen, because I think growth is when you say there's a growth team, it makes it seem like there's only one group of folks that are responsible for driving the business, where reality, obviously, nearly all parts of the business are driving business, right?
Yes.
So, but I'll say, obviously, there's brand marketers, growth marketers. I would say let's talk about the similarities. They both require customer insights to drive their job. They both require experimentation. And again, they're both driving revenue.
Yes.
But the big difference between them is the horizon for which you're going to see the return on those investments. And I would say the type of messaging or positioning that you're typically going to go for, right? Where a growth marketer, so for example, at Demand Gen, at Spendesk, we had this team was responsible for biweekly experiments and driving really that more monthly pipeline, right? That they were going to bring in, right?
Yes.
And focus more on optimizing certain channels. And typically with sometimes more, I would say, transactional or product-led messaging, but it doesn't need to be, right? Versus where brand marketing, the horizons for the return on the investment here, can be something more like a year, right? And usually they're focused on creating and changing more of a perception and creating more of a huge following, where the metrics that you're looking at is usually more of like around a year plus.
Okay.
Typically, I've seen companies that need to rethink their brand strategy are few. I'd say one, if you're in a really commoditized space, you're going to have to really focus on investing in brand marketing, right? Because it's kind of the only way that you're going to be able to differentiate and then retain that loyalty long term.
Yeah.
I'd say second, if you're going up market, I mean, the reality is PLG works super great for smaller companies that you don't have to have a lot of buy-in, right? You can easily slip that product into the company. But once you're going more up market, you have to get buy-in for a lot of folks, and you need to have that trust. And typically for someone to put their neck out on the line to convince folks to bring it in to like a more enterprise, you're going to have that brand trust. And the second I would say is really going into third, I would say going into new segments, right? You really are able to, in the PLG motion, get a lot of those early adopters, right, that are excited to try out new tools.
Yeah.
But once you want to kind of move more into traditional segments, maybe new geographies that you don't have existing, I think it's a really important moment to invest more. I think Notion did a really good example of this, right? I mean, they're a huge PLG darling, right, in terms of what they've done in making their product super easy to use with all the different templates and such. But once they wanted to start acquiring more traditional, they went huge in a beautiful out-of-home campaign and started to change their positioning away from the tool to really kind of changing the way they're influencing work. Yeah.
It makes me think actually about a podcast that I was listening to with Simon Sinek.
So good.
Yeah. And he was interviewing someone, I don't recall his name, but it's a guy very well known for addressing not just markets with like you have a problem, you just go with the solution. And then creates a company. He just look at the categories in general, and he's like, I think it's in B2C, but he's like looking at the category of just the toothbrush, and he's just looking at this category and trying to understand why when you go to the supermarket you have all the toothbrush and they're all the same. There's nothing really standing out. And so he's trying to brand from the perspective of looking at the category and then trying to completely shift the people's mind about how they look at the category. I don't know if you understand the...
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think back to the commoditization, right? Like it's toothbrush is a toothbrush, right? But like you're going to have, how do you feel? Like, I mean, what you want to create in there is like, how do you feel about that toothbrush that you choose?
Yeah.
You know, there's toothbrush brands that are the environmental friendly one. Are you know that this is something you're going to consume regularly, and are you worried about how you're impacting the environment? There's ones that are like people who are really obsessed with the cleanliness of their teeth, right? And is this the one that's like doctor recommended, trusted? It makes sense.
When I look at companies we work with at KLIMB, some companies, they just hired like a new C-level, a new CMO. And one of the first topic is like to address brand. Or like I said, not to mention any company, but a company that just got acquired by a big fund, let's say. The first project is like, we're going to rebrand, redo the logo, redo everything from the ground up, because we want to have this new momentum because for many reasons, you want maybe to look at the market differently because you acquire a company and you want to do things differently. You want to also maybe completely change the management, and you want to change a bit of everything, you know?
So I think there are good reasons to, because what you're talking more is like a visual rebrand versus a visual rebrand versus I think implementing a brand strategy, which to me are very separate things that can work together. I think typically if a new head of marketing, or anytime I've stepped into a new role, I reconsider the brand strategy. And that means to me, like, do we feel that we have some unique positioning? Do we feel that we're effectively connecting with our users in an emotional, value-driven way beyond just the fact that they like the product? And are we creating really a movement behind the product they're building, right? Not just do they just use the product? And I think like Spendesk was one of those examples. So now a visual redesign, I think should be done very selectively throughout a company's journey. One, it's very expensive, time consuming. It doesn't always land super well. I think like sometimes it actually can remove trust or confuse people, etc. So I don't know. I think you really only change the visual identity, I think, if like there's a real pivot in the company strategy, a real pivot in the segment you're going after, or maybe you really do need to redefine what your offer is. I don't know. Those are things I think. I think you should always be evolving the visual design to make it feel relevant to the times. But I do think sometimes companies do it in too big of like swift motions where they probably just they've been a bit lazy on the ongoing effort to keep it up.
Talking about visual is like, do you feel like when we design a brand, does it have to follow a trend?
You mean visually? Okay.
Because you see in the market website trends, branding trends, and so on. And when I design a new brand, do we have to really follow that trend because we have to be in the right vibe, or can you build like from day one like a timeless visual that you won't have to change really in the next 5 years?
I think it's $1 million question. I think so my answer is I don't think you want to aim to lead the trend, right? Like I think that's what most brands come to you for, right? It's really hard. You have a lot of clients though. Yeah. I think it's important to feel that your level of quality is on trend, but I think in reality, we don't all want to feel like most brands don't want to feel like a copycat, right? Again, like you want to have your own authenticity, but I think there's definitely parts of like UI or like how the website flows that I think people shouldn't obsess on. I think it's more of the visual components and again, the storytelling and messaging that should be what stands out. But I don't know. I don't think it's important to be on trend, but I think you do want to feel that you're a product that fits for this moment in time.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah, I get it.
And you do want to create a visual identity that hopefully should be something that should live with the life of your user for a while, right?
Yeah.
You know, because like you hope that someone who uses your product is using you for 5, 6, 10, you know, perhaps they're in B2B for half most of their career.
When I was listening to you also, I was wondering, how do you get inspired by things? What's your process of, you know, what are your key resources you tend to look at on a weekly basis? Yeah. How do you get on trends also at the same time?
Well, so I think in general, my approach is to just, again, I'm always thinking about the brand. So I think it's something that I have like a side Notion note where I just like brain dump inspiration things I see all the time, right? Okay. Where it's like, if I see a funny GIF, if I see a meme, if I'm listening to a completely separate podcast, reading a book, etc., I'm always putting things that just like speak to me.
Okay. Do you feel like there is a big difference about how we look at branding in the US and in Europe?
Yes, absolutely. I think there's a huge difference between the US market, the French market, between, I would say, the level of investment, the type of investment, I would say some of the risk taking.
Yeah.
And just the comfortability in the founders being a part of the brand.
If you could rebrand a famous company,
I know.
Would you like to?
I was thinking, what would you do? You tell me yours first, and then I'll tell you mine.
It's super hard to say, okay, I want to rebrand this famous company because either the brand is super established, and so I don't want to take the risk, or maybe I had to look at companies. Let me think. It's harder to also to just put a name out there and say, okay.
That's why I turned it on you first.
you're doing a bad job. I don't know yet. Yeah, maybe. Yeah. I do have a famous company that I would like to rebrand. Maybe not just no, definitely. I think I would like to, in France, I think it's pretty present in Europe. I think Doctolib. I would love to do something about Doctolib because I think we could do something, modernize it even more, and really think about some cool brand campaigns that could have an impact. Yeah. So that would be a nice project.
I think that's actually a really good answer because I think their product is killer, but
their product is killer.
Exactly, but they really haven't invested in much emotive narrative.
So
that's a good one. I don't know. I was thinking more like super traditional, where I'm just gonna say, instead of a brand, I'm gonna say is more of a space, like movie theaters. Like I'd like to, I'd like to rebrand. I know that like obviously since COVID and Netflix and streaming and platforms, they've taken a huge hit. And I'm just such a huge fan of movies, and I'd love to see them come back. And so I don't know which AMC, they did a bit of a rebrand, but I think
trying to Netflix the space.
Yeah.
A common mistake you see in brand marketing?
Not investing in internal branding.
Internal branding.
Internal branding, I think, is the biggest one because, look, brand is at the core alignment, and if there's not enough focus on getting the employees behind the brand, understanding what you stand for, like immediately the consistency goes out the door. And I just think that if you don't really invest in making sure that the folks internally embody the values, I think it can erode the work quickly.
Okay. A trend that you can't stand in brand marketing?
I'll say in marketing in general, just gated content.
Gated content.
I think it's.
You don't like to put your email to download something.
No, it's just the worst. It's like a relic that needs to die. Like no one. It's just like it's a terrible experience. I think it also like now particularly content's so easy to create or find a better free version, and so people, I just think it's a waste. You put so much work into creating something, and then you're like, wait, you actually can't see it. So I'm hoping gated content just dies.
It's the worst, and especially for product demos. When I want to have a look at the product, you don't have any service available. Yeah, it's a nightmare. Yeah. You have been a CMO, and you are a CMO. What could be a good advice for a CMO starting out?
I would say, well, I think my first thing is invest in a network. I think great work, no matter what your discipline, marketing is not done in a vacuum. And I think it's just really important if you need to invest in creating really strong relationships with your cross-functional partners, because you can't just like bludger your way through to making a brand only within your department. It has to be something that permeates across the whole company. That's mistakes I've made. Like I haven't invested enough in those. So cross-functional, in external folks as well, like always be taking calls, always be talking to people in the industry, more experience, less experience, no matter what. Like you just always need to be learning and keeping up, because like the space moves so fast. You don't want to be someone who just like is stuck in like your playbook. And then third is like customers. Like no matter how senior you get in the company, you need to have customers on speed dial just to gut check you against what you're doing.
Okay.
So relationships, and then also freelancers and agencies too. Any
favorite resources, podcast, anything you want to put on the map?
I already mentioned this at the beginning, but Clear Class, friend, former Gusty, on brand, such a good newsletter. I think it's like, if you want a better definition for what brand led growth is, she coined the term brand market fit. So good. No Mercy, No Malice by Professor Galloway. So good. I think just he's a professor of marketing, but so much more. I think he just gives such a good take on storytelling, everything. I also love Diary of a CEO by Stephen Bartlett.
Yeah.
I think again, like covers much broader topics, but I think as a marketer, you need to always be in touch with like narratives and stories. And I think it helps you kind of stay close to things. Those are a few.
Okay. Sounds good.
Yeah.
Today we have this big AI trend.
Yeah.
What tool maybe you would like to recommend, like that is trendy or that you tried recently, related to branding, of course, design or something in AI?
Well, because I never give one answer. I think the established one is Claude. I think Claude first is like every marketer should be using it. I think it helps you, and I think agencies too, like it's such a good way for you to easily implement your guidelines and replicate work. But I think an up and coming one that I've seen and I just started testing out, which I think is super cool, is Lasco. So they do image regeneration for your brand identity, and I think these types of tools are pretty cool.
Okay.
I realized I did want to ask you one hot take question.
Okay.
What is some of the worst habits your clients have when working with you? You don't have to name the clients. I'll know them, but you don't have to name them.
There are a lot of worst habits with customers. If I take like the customer cycle to make it easier in my head, from the start, a bad habit is to really not have a brief and just contacting an agency or a freelancer and just asking for, I want a logo. And that's just the start. So it's a good thing. But in the end, we don't really know how we want the discussion to go, how we can estimate the project. And sometimes customers are like, just, can you give us like a rough estimate about how much it's going to cost? And it's really hard to answer the question. Of course, now I just tend to do also, okay, this is going to cost, I don't know, 50K, just to also see how people react from the very first interaction, because it also helps me to have discussions with just our customers, our market. So that would be like good habit to have. Clear brief. And actually I do help in this process because we prepare like brief templates to send to customers. So that would be one. Then during the project, I feel like a bad habit is thinking that you can only rely on the agency to do everything and not really consider the fact that it's really a collaboration. And at some point, we don't really know your market. We don't really know your personas super well. We don't really know your product as well as you do. And we need to have time with you. We need to have, it continues. We need to have time with you to just really understand deeply your context and your concerns and so on. And then when we are in the final steps, even if we are responsible, of course, for executing the work, someone that will just verify what has been done in the end has to be on the customer side. And sometimes the customer just rely on us to have everything perfect from the beginning until the end. And it's not really happening. Even if we are good, we're just humans, and we tend to have errors here and there.
Humans now powered by AI.
Yes, humans not powered by AI. And then worst habit at the end of the project, I don't know. Maybe a fun one would be to not give shout outs to the agency when they share the work.
I think that's fair.
Yeah.
That's fair.
So yeah, that's it.
I'll try my best not to have any of the bad habits.
So thanks for watching, everyone. Thanks for listening. Hopefully you'll get that on all the platforms, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcast, and so on. Don't forget to subscribe. I still have, for now, 0 subscribers. So I think we'll get to a lot of them in the future. And you can also follow us too on LinkedIn if you want. My name is Michael Saifuddin and
Stephanie Bowker.
Stephanie Bowker. So thank you.